The 2032 Olympic Games are set to reshape South-East Queensland, not just through sport, but through the property market as well. With billions in infrastructure spend and a strong track record from the past host cities out there, Brisbane's housing market is poised for major long-term growth. And joining me to tell us a little bit about that is Daniel Peterson from the team at iBuyNew Australia. Good to have you with me in the studio. Why is the Olympics such a game changer beyond some of the things I alluded to there? What are you expecting?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you think about what's going on in South-East Queensland with infrastructure spending alone, as you touched on, Mike, it's a massive, massive program. There's sort of two layers to the infrastructure spending. There's what's going into all the sporting stadiums and the upgrades, and then there's all the other supporting infrastructure, mainly to do with connectivity, transport, rail, etc., roads. So combined, it's an enormous program. But I think the other thing that I always, sometimes people forget, what's going on on the international stage. Brisbane is not well known. But come 2032, it's going to be in lights for 2 to 4 weeks. And I think, globally, it's going to be probably one of the most well-known cities in all of Australia. So forget about Sydney and Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, should I say, being the key cities. Brisbane is going to become that key city come 2032.
The third jewel in the crown, sitting right under our noses the whole time. But how has Brizzy's property market already responded since the Games were just announced even, rather than actually just the event itself?
Yeah, so the Games were announced a fair bit earlier than what it would ordinarily happen. So it was announced 11 years prior to the Games themselves in 32. So in 2021, when they were first announced, the market did respond, and we've seen sort of over that 3-4 year period, we've seen pretty rapid price growth already, about 50%. I kind of think about it in sort of sporting analogy terms that maybe we're at quarter time in terms of the cycle on Brisbane. And the growth that we see happen in these other host cities around the world, it tends to happen between the sort of the 5 years leading in and the 3 years after. And those 3 years after the Games shouldn't be forgot about, because on the back of the Olympic Games, a lot of people thinking about migrating to Australia will first and foremost think of Brisbane, I believe, and they'll end up migrating to Brisbane as opposed to Melbourne, Sydney or somewhere else in the country. And that's going to drive much stronger population growth than Brisbane's ever seen, and that'll put huge demand on housing, and that should drive capital values.
Absolutely. With that macro look, I feel like I'm picking up what you're putting down, but the infrastructure spend's nearly double that of past hosts, I understand. What impact's that going to have? I guess more money injected into the space is going to make it a more appealing option for people, right? Yeah,
that's right. I mean, we've always known, people that study the property market, they know that there's a number of key drivers of capital value growth, and one of the big ones is infrastructure spending. Now, when you look at the host cities from the last 25 years, they tend to spend between $5 and $10 billion in Australian dollar terms, obviously in different currencies around the world. But when you look at it, what Brisbane's doing at close to 20 billion, there's about 8 billion being spent on stadiums and sporting upgrades. But the other 12 billion, or all the other supporting infrastructure, makes it about a $20 billion program. It's almost double than we've ever seen in the last 5 or 6 Olympic Games and all those other host cities. So that infrastructure spending is very, very significant, and that will continue to drive really good capital growth for South-East Queensland, not just Brisbane, but the broader South-East Queensland corridor.
So let's talk about the trends we've seen in property prices in the past Olympic host cities, which you touched on there, say for 25 years and things like that. People generally flood, they stay, or do things move around a little bit afterwards? Does the hype die down in some ways, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, really when you look at the data and study these host cities, what you see happening is kind of in and around these key sporting stadiums and the key infrastructure that's going in is where you see the most capital growth. Now the majority of that growth happens, as I said before, in the 5 years leading up to the Games and the 2 or 3 years after. Now, and that'll ebb and flow with other factors that are driving the property market, whether that be policy or interest rates or housing supply and other factors. But the underlying Games and the infrastructure and all the hype, it's not just that kind of 6 months that straddle each side of the Games.
Not a sugar hit, if you will.
No, it is a sustained period of 7, 8, 9 years of growth, and we've seen that in all those other countries or host cities. One of the things that really stood out to us when we studied those cities is that normally the growth rate you see in the host city is double that of the broader country. So if you take somewhere like, say Athens in 2004, Well, Athens experienced about 80% price growth in the 7 years leading up, but the rest of Greece saw about half that in terms of the growth rate.
Interesting. Okay, so for people looking to get involved and perhaps make the move to the warmer weather up there, what advice would you say to start? Is now the time to start, perusing the options, or to give it a little bit of time?
Well, I mean, you obviously don't need to move there to make an investment in South-East Queensland, and the majority of people that we help are actually in southern states and even from the western side of the country, and offshore. But the sooner people move, the better is the reality, because the market is not going to stagnate for the next 5 years and then see capital growth. It's going to see steady growth all the way through in our view, and that tends to be what you see in most markets, and they'll ebb and flow a bit. But if people are taking the long-term view around property, which they should, then if they're investing now, they're going to do better than investing in 3 or 4 years' time in the lead up to the games.
Good advice from you. And Daniel, if people want to find out a little bit more about this, perhaps pick your brain for some more ideas, where's the best place to go to connect? Are we talking LinkedIn, website, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we've published a report just very recently about the Olympics and the effects of that, which people can go to our website, iBuyNew.com.au, and they can find that report very easily. It's on the homepage. They'll be able to download that report. And if they wanted to get further broader advice about property investment, they can certainly call our 1300 number or make an inquiry on the website.
Perfect stuff from you, and I appreciate you bringing this to our attention and running me through it today.
No worries. Cheers, Mike.